Hello and welcome to another video from In3D Software. Today we're going to look at Article Designer and how we can use the different orientations to create different types of cabinetry. So one of the requests that we get quite frequently is angled cabinetry of different various types, and one of the most popular is a top box that's angled to create a sloped style top for medical furniture. So this is for a commercial interior, but it could really be applied to any type of bespoke cabinetry. So what I'm going to do is draw a polyline first of all using AutoCAD tools. So I'm just going to go onto the top view and you can see I've got one in here that's already created. And this was drawn with a polyline from this bottom corner here. And then I've traced round and you can see that rather than giving me a complete point here, the line has actually come up, I think about 1 millimeter. So I've drawn out, up 1 millimeter, and then I know that I want my angle to come back a certain distance. So you can see with dynamic input ticked down at the bottom, I can then tab between and type in my angle, which is going to be 164 degrees. And that then gives me a line that's coming off in this direction. So I'll just click anywhere and then come back to my endpoint by pressing C, enter for close. And then if I draw another polyline from my start point straight up, I can then snap back to this intersecting point. And that's going to give me my line work. So now that I've got my side of my carcass here with my angle on, what I want to do is go to the design tab, and then click on this button here, which is the contour wizard. I can then say outline geometry, select and give it a name. So I'm going to call it outline geometry angle top, and click next, and then select that shape. And this will then bring it into imos IX. So the next step is to start to drive this parametrically. So once I've saved this, what I want to do is go to my variables and create a new one. So I'll go to the order related variables, and you can see in here I'm going to create just a new variable in the root of getting started, and this is going to be called angle. The type is going to be set as a number, and the default value will be 164 degrees. Okay, so now that I've done that, it's saying do I want to save that, and I'll just say yes. I'll go back into my element manager, and then I can use that variable to drive this angle. So I'm going to lock absolute my start points, and then in this line here I want to have this as a linear division, and I'm going to say that this is going to go from 1 to 0 in X, i.e. all the way along to the 0 point here. Same in Y. This line is going to be locked at 1 millimeter, because that's going to give me a little bit of a tolerance in here for my angle to start rather than giving me a sharp edge. So I'm going to say that this should be 1 mil in Y, although I can change this if I need to. Then I've got this line which is going to be controlled with an angle and X coordinate, and I'm going to use, instead of 164, angle as my parametric variable. And then I'm going to reference the top left hand corner up here and say that this should go to absolute 0 of top left. So that's going to go all the way up there. Then finally what I want to do is come in and say that this again is a linear division of 0 to 1 and 1 to 0. 0 to 1. So it's going to come all the way down. So that's now closed off my product, and now if I change the width of my product, let's say 300, that's going to reduce the width, but it's going to maintain that angle here, and that height is always going to be then driven by the angle in here. So now that I've got that shape, the next thing I want to do is close this down and go to the design tab and then choose Article Designer from the side. So you can do that by dropping down and choosing the side view. Once I've done that, I'm just going to position this over here and orbit around, so you can see that I've got a box, but as soon as I assign my outline geometry, which is this setting here, it's going to change that now to be the same wedge shape. So now what I can do is start to add parts, and the most important part is going to be this face here. I'm going to click on that and tell it that it should be not a shelf but a door, because that's going to then throw the part to the outside of the wedge. And then in here I'm going to choose the door panel. In this case I'm going to choose this one here, which is just going to be like a filler, because it's not going to actually be hinged. It's just going to be a decorative panel. Then what I want to do is add in my sides. So I'm going to say left side and right side, and that's going to then fill these parts in, and these will then be nested out on my CNC to this angle to form part of my former. The next thing I want to do is then add in a strengthening or brace piece that's going to connect these things together. So what I'm going to do is just come into the divider and click divide. Now I don't want to divide it along this length here. What I want to do is divide this with a partition, and then I can choose how I want to divide this. So I'm going to say I want to divide the depth first, so you can see it's going to divide it along this length now, and instead of 1 to 1 I'm going to say 1 to 100 mil from that leading front edge here, and I could come down a little bit more in here. Let's say 1 to 70, something like that. That then gives me a zone in here where I can now put in a bottom section that's going to avoid this front part of the wedge, and then I need an upper part in here as well. So what I'll do is I'll just go to the back here and change that to be something like this. There we go. So that's now given me my parts in here, and I can now parametrically change this. So the height is always going to be dictated by the angle, but in my depth in here, if I say that I want this to be 500 mil now, it's going to come back along that angle for me and carry on at 164 degrees. But if I then click tick, you can see in here now I've got my Keikus holding my top panel on. I just need to move the position of these, and then I've got my cams in the background. Let's just switch into realistic view. I can then say article related, choose the product. I'll be able to find my angle and say that this should now actually be 150 millimeters instead of 164, and that will refresh and change the angle of my top panel. So if I now have, for example, a wall cabinet in a medical institution where I need to protect the top of the carcass, I can choose my wall cupboard. I can then copy my product up onto its top here and use the stretch command to stretch back the width, and then all the way over to the side. And now I've got my top piece in here that I can now dictate that angle if need be. Thanks for watching.